Good morning. It's Pop again, Dennis Murray. I'm feeling a little whimsical today, so I'm starting the day off with the camera aimed downwards a little bit so you can read this T-shirt. It says, "Grandpa, the man, the myth, the bad influence." I kind of like being a little bit, I don't know, a little bit whimsical, something stirred up a little bit. Maybe embarrass the kids. Get back at all. Pay back at me, huh? Okay, so now this is Popcast 46. It's part 7 of the evolution of the gift of each other. And I'm going to talk a little bit about coming days here. It's part of why I'm feeling kind of special this morning. Next Tuesday, I will finish Popcast 50. And Wednesday is my 59th wedding anniversary with Gail, my childhood sweetheart, my high school sweetheart, and the love of my life. And as you know, she's suffering from enough dementia that she has to live in a dementia care home nearby, and I will be allowed to, in spite of the coronavirus, to visit her that day, along with my daughter Betsy, for half an hour. But we have to maintain social distance, and so no hugs, no kisses, and we have to wear masks and etc. But nonetheless, I've only been visiting her by FaceTime calls that they very kindly set up for some months now, and this will be kind of nice. Sure look forward to when I can give her a hug again. Okay, so the other thing is that next Tuesday, the 50th Popcast, will be a recap, a summary of the things we've covered since the 23rd Popcast. The 22nd Popcast was essentially a summary of the first 21. In those first 3 weeks, I laid out basically everything I have to say as a broad theory, and all I've done since is develop more about awe and now more about the evolution of the gift of each other. There's a huge amount of detail to go into that is offered in support of the basic premises. And so from time to time, stopping and doing a recap seems like a good idea. So just in the way of information. Now, yesterday I was talking about intimacy, that it's my idea that a better explanation than Deacon offers for why men and women decided to start living as bonded pairs when previously they had not been, is the development of rudimentary individual psychology that led to the feeling, the emotion of wanting intimacy with sex, and it led to bonding. And I want to add to that today that Deacon talks about altruism and selfishness, reciprocal altruism and reciprocal selfishness, as parts of his explanation, that people altruistically decided, no, we won't provision lots of women and have sex with lots of women. We'll choose one, which means we forgo the possibility of having babies with lots of children. And we'll focus on having babies with one woman so we know that we're supporting our own babies. Now, bear in mind, Deacon's point of view is that the men knew that babies born from a woman you were having sex with were your babies, which I find difficult to imagine that they knew that at that point in time. And so my explanation is different from his. I talked about that yesterday. I'm talking about his right now. So his is that it was both altruistic to say, well, I'll forego sex with a variety of women and on the male's part, and on the female's part, it was altruistic to say, I'll forego the sex with a variety of men. And it also was selfish in that it concerned provisioning, that the male only wanted to provision the woman who was producing his progeny, and the woman wanted to have all of the provisioning that her male could supply and not have him divided among two or three females with whom he was having sex as well. So, Deacon creates a case for it if you can concede the point that perhaps men and women were aware of the connection between sex and babies, then his explanation is a really good one. The rest of what he says in his book is just frankly fabulous. I mean, it's just a brilliant book. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. I just want to stay focused on this little bit today. Now, I'm going to read you a quote, but then I'm going to get a little personal about my own point of view, which I don't use the phrase altruism, reciprocal altruism, and reciprocal selfishness. I think of intimacy and practicality as a better equivalent for those two phrases. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But while I'm still on Deacon, I want to read a quote. It's about, 4 or 5 sentences, so I don't usually read such long quotes from anybody. But this is a good one to summarize the part of his position that we've looked at so far. So on page 401. But without symbols that refer publicly and unambiguously to certain abstract social relationships and their future extension, including reciprocal obligations and prohibitions, hominids could not have taken advantage of the critical resource available to habitual hunters. The need to mark these reciprocally altruistic and reciprocally selfish relationships arose as an adaptation to the extreme evolutionary instability of the combination of group hunting, scavenging, and male provisioning of mates and offspring. This was the question for which symbolization was the only viable answer. Symbol culture was a response to a reproductive problem that only symbols could solve, the imperative of representing a social contract. Some pretty good stuff. He's a very gifted intellectual, and his prose style, takes some work. But boy, he's put in the work. And he's just written, by the way, this book was written in 1997. And he wrote another one in 2010 called The Human Mind, the Evolution of Mind from Brain. I've forgotten the exact title, but I just read it again yesterday, and it's another, very gifted person's very elaborate improvement of thinking on the subject. He's talking in that book about emergence, um, how mind emerges from brain, and all of the issues involved in that, which we talked about yesterday. So we're not going to go into that again. Okay, so I want to finish on a personal note. So, intimacy and practicality. So, um, it's my idea, my hope that what happened at the time that Deacon is talking about 2 to 2.5 million years ago is that our minds became sophisticated enough to create a rudimentary psychology, and that psychology uh, began to want the emotion of intimacy with sex. And clearly, we do have that emotion today. And so it arose at some point. Um, and for lots of reasons, I think it's possible it could have arisen at that point, quite so long ago, when this incredible new way of living began that no other species before or since has ever done, living in bonded pairs in society. So when I was dating Gail, my wife, and I can't help but think about her more right now than usual because, and usually I think about her pretty much because she kind of made my whole life. She, she and I helped each other grow in ways that were not imaginable. Just I never thought I would be where I am and who I am at this stage in my life, and a huge amount of it is because of our relationship. So thinking about Gail, so she was a high school junior. I was a high school senior when we met on December 30th, 1959. In case you can't imagine anybody being alive from those days. Elvis was still a young man, and it was a long time ago. And she was 16, and I was 17, and I had met her through a friend who I had been dating, who wanted to date my brother because he was 3 years older and a hell of a lot cooler than me. And she said, "But don't worry, I have a friend." And she brought Gail to a party I had that night at my house. And just to set the tone, I'm going to talk about intimacy and practicality. And so Gail and I just basically fell head over heels pretty quickly. I I had only dated girls who were intellectuals like me, because honestly, I wasn't at all good looking. I wasn't in the slightest bit handsome. I wasn't well groomed, and I was too much of a nerdy intellectual to really, be the sort of fellow that girls are drawn to. Um, but my family had just moved to Annapolis, and my father took a little small summer house and turned it into a really huge mansion. And he had been doing extremely well, and he had always loved this beach house, and he wanted to move, he wanted to build a permanent home there and move into it and leave our permanent home in the city of Washington. So, when I meet Gail, she's brought by her girlfriend Martha to my house, and it's enormous. And Martha tells her I'm pretty smart and I'm in a high school for really smart people, and I'm headed off to Georgetown the following year, and so and also happily for me, um, my mother had purchased. She bought all my clothes. I didn't know anything about clothes, but she had purchased a boat neck sweater. Now, I mean, imagine a boat neck sweater. I didn't even know what the hell it was. I wasn't aware that that's what I was wearing, but Gail explained to me later it was a damn good thing I was wearing it because she thought it was pretty, pretty nice grooming on my part. How did she know that it was what my mom bought for me? So apparently it's because it has a certain neckline that defines it. And it was, a nice color. And, you know, um, I was fat, but not as large as I am now. And I was young and I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And, she was warm and personal and wow. Um, so we started dating, and some while later, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, um, she was at my house doing her homework because I lived in the city of Washington during the week to finish high school. And I just came down on weekends. So I think I picked her up from school one Friday afternoon, and she was at my house doing her homework. And she had her, notebook, her school notebook there. And she left it open, and she had written Mrs. Dennis L. Murray on the page a lot of times. And I just, my heart burst. I just was so moved. And, uh, you don't have a whole bunch of moments in your life when you're deeply moved. And I've had more than most, but that one still sticks very strongly with me. Um, and her attitude towards me was a combination of intimacy and practicality. She and I became lovers after we fell in love and spent some time together, um, and felt our commitment. We began to make love, and she also was drawn to a person who, for practical reasons, she's a sensible young woman who holds community standards in high regard. Um, there are lots of young people like that, men and women, for whom community standards are of some importance in how they live their life. And under community standards, even though I was a bit of a nerd, I was also the sort of fellow that might be there for you over a career. I was a gentleman. I was reasonably intelligent. I was from a wealthy family. I was very well educated. So I had good prospects, and I was a good person. I am a good person. Um, and so she did what both parts of this. She and I wanted intimacy, and she more than I had practicality. It took her a long time to teach me any practicality, but um, you know. So my point being that what Deacon is talking about, which he uses the word reciprocally altruistic and reciprocally selfish to describe, I think exists today and began at the time he's describing it, but I would rather use the words intimacy and practicality because I think that, when a young woman, some young women are not going to have a personality that this kind of practicality matters. But an awful lot of young women, when deciding who they will explore the possibilities of falling in love with, pay attention to practicalities. Does this guy look like he's going to be able to provide for our family? Does he look like he's going to honor, the bonds? Is he going to be faithful? Um, And so, I think it's worth noting when there's something in today's society that's a common feature, like practicality in relationships that are to become intimate, that those features had to begin somewhere, and it gives support for your contention that they began at a particular time. They certainly began. All you have left to talk about is, well, did they begin about then or some other time? So that makes it a little less of a sell. And so that's where we are today. A combination of whimsical and personal and the wisdom of Deacon and my own practical experience with the woman of my dreams.